Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I'm Jill Bloom, Group Publisher of Walls and Ceilings, and welcome to If Walls Could Talk. It's always such an honor to have a few minutes with Trent Cotney, partner of Adams and Reese. Trent, thanks for joining me.
Hey, Joe, it's great to be here.
Well, Trent, let's talk. There's always a lot to talk about when it comes to legal issues, but I know that there's a couple of things that are probably important at the moment. The first is when it comes to software. There's a lot of things that a contractor needs to really look at when it comes to data and who owns the data, what are the details. Anyway, can you fill us in? What does everybody really need to know when they're looking to buy or purchase a new software system for their company?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is, look, I've been a business owner and, technology and taxes are two things I don't like to think about very much. And typically when I had a vendor agreement in front of me, I would just sign it and send it on. But one of the things that we're seeing, especially with the emergence of AI, is when you're signing these software agreements, who owns what? What happens in the event of a dispute? If for some reason you're terminating the agreement, how do you get access back to your information? Who pays for that access or that transfer of that data? And what I see a lot of contractors doing is they're just not spending any time. They'll negotiate their customer contracts, they'll negotiate their subcontracts, they'll negotiate their applicator agreements, but they don't spend any time revising or trying to negotiate their vendor agreements with software. And it's very important because, we've all run into problems in the past with software not communicating with other software that you might have or not performing as intended. So making sure that you kind of take the time to protect yourself on the front end is critical. And the biggest thing I'm seeing, Jill, is lack of access to data or inability to get stuff back in a cost-effective manner. That is the biggest issue. So definitely recommend that any contractors out there spend the same amount of time that you would on a customer contract for negotiating that as you would on a vendor agreement for software. Definitely put some time into that and think about, what could happen if things go wrong.
So, Trent, what do you see are the top three reasons that it just doesn't work? Like a contractor's like, I should have thought of this, never thought about this. But what do you see? Like, why are they jumping in all excited and then realizing, not going to work?
Yeah, and I can speak from personal experience as well. So number one is what I said before, and that is one software doesn't speak to something else that you have in your suite, right?
Okay.
So getting software to communicate with each other sometimes is difficult. There's a lot of proprietary stuff, and they don't necessarily open it up to other technologies. So making sure that you have run that to ground and understand, for example, if you're buying CRM, how that interfaces with your accounting software, or if you're buying estimating software, how that, interfaces with scheduling, or material supply inventory, that kind of stuff. The second thing is adoption failure. So, I remember in the past, I got some software I just thought was the best thing ever. Right. I thought it was the coolest thing ever, but I couldn't get any of my employees to use it. So I spent all this money on something that was never used, and they kept using the old way. Right. So adoption is key. You've got to make sure that you've got a good rollout, good training, and that you're enforcing that adoption so that people are taking advantage of the software you just paid for. And the third thing is that technology is moving so fast and so quickly, especially these days. I mentioned AI. Things are happening so fast that you could easily buy something this month that becomes outdated 6 months from now. So making sure that you've got something that has the ability to upgrade, that has updates, that is, that's got a little bit of a proven track record. All those things are important, right? You need to really take time and vet the software before you buy it. Because Jill, these things are very expensive, right? I remember, stripping a lot of checks, and some of it went really well, some of it not so much. So definitely take that time to do your homework in advance.
Yeah, well, great insight on that, Trent. And so, would there have been a way that you could have tested that software to make sure that it did speak to your HR or your accounting?
Yeah. So in some cases, demos are always provided, right? And sometimes they'll give you access for a period of time. It could be a couple of days or a week or a month to test run things and see how you like it. The problem is getting real world integration. Like there's only so much that you can do on a test run. So one of the things I recommend when we're reviewing software is to create a phase by phase approach where you have that built in. right? You have an integration period, and then you have the ability to move forward to the next step based off of how it's performing, right? And you set milestones, whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish with your software, you make sure that you've got recognizable, milestones. Now, if it's something that's like $12 a month, you don't need to do all that. I'm talking about the six-figure type software platforms where you really want to make sure that whatever it is you're getting is going to integrate and is going to work, and that the software vendor is going to be a business partner with you in making sure that it's successful.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, let's move on to another topic, Trent, because this
Sure.
one's really important, especially when it comes to private equity.
Hmm.
There's definitely a lot. I mean, talking about integrations, but when a contractor is looking to sell their company or partner with however it all works, they're all a little bit different. But what are you seeing right now with private equity, and what's your insight?
Yeah, absolutely. So private equity and platform acquisition is still popping, right? It's still chugging along, still moving. You're still seeing consolidation. But one of the things that I've always told an owner of a contractor is to make sure that you are taking the time to understand what does your future look like, right? And I always say that owners make horrible employees. I'm a great example of that. But one of the things that you want to understand, typically you'll see at least a couple years where the C-suite is staying on to help during transition. But you need to be comfortable with the fact that the business that you may have helped found and grow may not look the same after acquisition, and you have to be okay with that, right? And if you're not okay with that, then you need to partner with someone that is going to tell you, and this is what my future is going to be. It's going to be part of the closing documents, part of the transaction, so you know exactly what to prepare for. But I've had a lot of contractor owners be surprised or upset about what happened post acquisition, because they saw their business dramatically change, or in some cases disappear, the result of additional acquisitions, or things that happen. So just be prepared, think about it in advance. You've got to kind of take it into account, that emotional element into an acquisition, and oftentimes owners overlook that.
Yeah, Trent, you and I have both seen this. We've seen a lot of people get so
Right.
excited about the big check,
Oh
and
yeah.
then all of a sudden it's like, okay, this doesn't feel so good.
Right.
I watched my company completely change or crumble or do something in a totally different direction. So yeah, I got to look at, but that a lot of times I feel like they're given a really pretty rosy picture of what it's going to be like, and when it's not like that, it's hard to take.
Yeah, yeah, you've got to, it's very easy to get distracted by the pot of money, and, the money is good and the money is there, and that's obviously a component, but you need to take a holistic approach at it, right? You need to understand, if you put your whole life into a business and it's suddenly not yours anymore, are you okay with that, right? Are you okay moving on to whatever the next, plan in your life is? And the only thing that I advise, contractors that are going through that process is think about it in advance. Really think about it. Talk to your family, talk to your friends, make sure you're comfortable with it, because there's nothing worse than that regret after the fact, right? And,
Sure.
unfortunately, I've seen a few examples of that. But again, a lot of acquisitions going on, a lot of great platforms and PE companies out there. So,
Yeah, there
just
are.
make sure that you're thinking about it.
Absolutely. And the last thing I want to talk to you about is, Trent, is the backlog. I know that there's a lot of contractors. We're talking about it at Best of Success in a few weeks.
Mhm.
Things are slowing down a little bit. And what's the best way that contractors should manage the business legally?
Yeah, it is, to me, it's definitely a slowdown. And me, I don't sugarcoat anything. I'm a lawyer, so I'm naturally negative and pessimistic. But I think some of it, is lack of storm. Some of it is other factors that are out there. But to me, a lot of this is just an adjustment. It's an adjustment back to where we were pre-COVID. We had a lot of artificial demand that was created during COVID. Some huge, enormous years, for manufacturing, distribution, and installation. And I think we're just getting back to those 2019 levels, right? And yeah, it's painful, but I think there's some course correcting that's going on. So my advice to contractors is business fundamentals. That's all that you should focus on, right? If the cash is flowing, it's very easy to obscure the cracks in your business. When that cash stops flowing, it's pretty easy to see where you have problems. So, focus on the fundamentals, watch your AR closely. Cash is king. Look to, eliminate debt where you can. And just run a good, solid business. Those contractors that are good business owners will ride whatever storm this is out without any issue. But yeah, it is definitely a course correction. That's how I would look at it. Ultimately, I think we're just getting back to where we should have been pre-COVID.
Yeah. Great insight as always, Trent. If anybody
Yeah.
has any questions, how do they find you?
Sure. Email me, trent.cotney@arlaw.com or anywhere social at Trent Cotney.
Sounds great. If anybody has any questions for us, it's roofingcontractor.com or wconline.com. Stay safe and healthy, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks again, Trent.
Thanks, Joe.